was it a great moment when you made your first film in 1991, Life in the Time of Hysteria, Solo con tu pareja is the Spanish title? Was it a great moment then? Was it a difficult time to break into Mexican film?
Well, at that point, that was a period at the end of the 70s and throughout the 80s, in which basically Mexican cinema almost disappeared. I mean, there were like, the production was very, very limited, and the real filmmakers, they were really struggling, and definitely they were not first-time directors from the young generation. I was very lucky. I was benefit from a moment in which suddenly there was a room for not only to bring back a continuity for the old masters, and they were not so old. They are not so old, but like Felipe Casals and Ripstein and Hermosillo, but also there started to be an opening for people doing their first films. In that period, everything was dictated by the government sponsoring the films. I think that what is happening right now is a whole wave of filmmakers that are completely pretty much the expression is they are not asking for permission to make their films.
I mean, I want to go back to your first film, Life in the Time of Hysteria, because I remember when I saw it, it seemed very unlike a lot of the stuff that was coming out of Mexico at the time. Again, you've got a middle-class protagonist, a womanizer, and you co-wrote the film with your brother Carlos.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw it, it reminded me of Ernst Lubitsch's comedies, that there's a real kind of comic feel to it, and the dialogue is very quick-fire, a little bit like Woody Allen.
I've always been a big fan of comedy. I've been a big fan of screwball comedies. I really admire Lubitsch. I think that Lubitsch sometimes has been, in a way, he created, unwillingly, he created a lot of damage in comedy in the 40s, because when people talk about the Lubitsch touch and the sophistication, people thought that it was people in fracks and upper classes. When what was so great about Lubitsch was actually something way more subtle than the real elegance and the touch had to do with a precise timing, and the master, how he mastered subtext into his comedy. But also it was a really enjoyable rhythm in which rhythm itself became the content. And another element in that film was Scorsese, particularly Life Lessons, that is one of his shorts in New York Stories. That Lubezki and I, we study over and over in order to understand how he does his filmmaking. So it was, at that point, we just wanted we were trying to learn. I remember when we were doing TV, our goal was to make a good shot. When we were doing Love in the Time of Hysteria, our goal was to craft a good scene. We were not even conscious about making a good movie. And it was about absorbing all of these things that you're talking about.
Well, you talked about Lubezki, Emmanuel Lubezki, who's been your director of photography on a lot of your features, and the relationship began there, and you stuck together. What is it about his work that you find so extraordinary? Because obviously it's been a journey that you've undertaken together.
I know, we call him Chivo. Emmanuel Lubezki is Chivo, and I know him forever. We used to circle the same parties when we were teens. We knew each other. We were not particular friends, but we knew each other. Then I was in film school, and 2 or 3 years later, because I think he's 3 years younger than me, he started film school. I was doing a lot of work as a DP, so he started to work as my assistant. And it was very evident very soon that he was the real DP. It was so obvious. We have done a lot of little TV shows together. And then when I did Love in Time of Hysteria, we kept on just working together. And ever since we were doing those TV things, it was a constant attitude of learning. And we speak the same language. I'm talking about a creative language and a way of seeing light and a way of seeing film narrative. We believe, the two of us, we have a deep faith that you can do a film without screenplay, you can do a film without sound, you can do a film without music, you can even do a film without actors, but you cannot do a film without a camera.
What about, I mean, you talked about the relationship with Emmanuel and how that's gone on, and obviously you collaborated together in Y tu mamá también. Your brother Carlos was responsible for co-writing the screenplay for both Love in the Time of Hysteria and Y tu mamá también. How do you work with your brother on the screenplays?
Yeah, it was different in the sense that we were, at that point, we were way more, we had passed the moment in which we wanted to do just a good scene. Mm-hmm. Now we want to make a good film. You know,
so that's the difference between your first film and your second film.
Yeah,
and your
so.
second Mexican film.
Yeah. We were really more self-aware about also our responsibility towards cinema, and we began to articulate also, be more articulate about the thematic concerns, and that was a big difference. When we start, this is one of those that we had, one story that we had in the drawer, that even when we did Love in the Time of Hysteria, this was a possibility of a story that actually, in a way, was triggered by Chivo. Mm-hmm. At some point, he was talking about doing a road movie about people going to the beach, and we ended up doing Love in the Time of Hysteria. And then we undusted these pieces of paper that we have about this, and I was living in New York. I remember sitting in my garden, and we started talking about that. And I said, we need a voiceover that is, and he started whining that, saying that it was going to look like the Wonder Years. And then I said, no, I want you to see this. And I had masculine, feminine Godards, and I play masculine, feminine. And 10 minutes into the film, says, okay, I get it. I'll watch it later. Let's go and work. Mm-hmm. You know, he understood that it was a voice that was a way more objective voice, and that it was a voice that it was not going to narrate or tell you the story, but it was just going to give you a context, an environment, if you may.
And that's one of the most distinctive things about the film is that voiceover and the commentary it makes on the journey that the two boys make, the road movie that the two boys make, because often they're traveling through the countryside, and that voiceover makes very distinct commentaries that make it an incredibly social film. Every
choice and decision throughout the way when we were writing the script had to be a game of mirrors in terms of connecting with society. We were clear that we wanted to do as much as a movie about these two kids seeking for identity, and even this woman seeking for her own identity, together as portraying the search for identity of a country. So there was already, in the past maybe it would have been just instinctual about what we felt that it was right. In this one there was a bigger self-awareness of what we were doing. Is that why so much of the film is shot in long shot, wide shot, long takes? I mean, is that one of the reasons? The characters are constantly framed against an environment, against a social context. The approach that we took was what we call a more subjective approach, like in A Little Princess. In A Little Princess, you don't see the things the way they are. You see the things the way that the little girl perceives the world. So you're seeing the universe through the filter of the eyes of a little girl. And so everything was about going inside her perception and see this universe through her perception. With Y tu mamá también, we decided to stop that and said we want to just be very objective. We want to observe reality the way it is. We want, rather than creating effect, we wanted to honor the moments. So the work with the actors was a completely different thing. Rather than trying to craft moments that you were going to enhance through the effect of editing and montage, with the actors was about trying to create a moment of truthfulness in which the camera was going to be just there to register that moment of truthfulness. And also the camera had to be distant, so you didn't favor character versus environment. So it's a film that in which basically there are no close-ups. Everything is very wide and allowing those moments to flow without the interruption of editing. It's interesting because you talked about it being a film that's a metaphor for kind of Mexico growing and going through adolescence. And I think one of the things that's really refreshing about the film is that it's a very honest treatment of adolescence. I think that adolescence is a perfect, is I mean, the seeking for identity is a life process because it goes parallel with the process of wearing new masks. Adolescence is such a catalyzing process in that sense. I really like to try to communicate with younger people. I have a big faith and a big belief in the next generation. I'm not very hopeful about our present. I'm if anything, pessimistic about the present, but I'm very hopeful about the future.